My wife sold Dad's watch box for $600. Trash, she said. Daniel needs cash. I was devastated. Then the buyer called. Sir, one watch has something engraved inside. What I found destroyed my marriage and exposed a killer who'd been hunting elderly men for 12 years. My father knew. He left me proof. My name is Roland Hayes. I'm 60 years old, been a building inspector for the city of Columbus, Ohio for the past 32 years. I've spent my life making sure structures are sound, that foundations won't fail, that people are safe in their homes. Ironic, isn't it? I could spot a weakness in a building from 50 feet away, but I missed the rot in my own house. My father, Raymond Hayes, passed away 8 months ago at 83. He died in his sleep, peaceful, the way he lived. Dad was a watchmaker by trade, spent 40 years at Klein & Sons downtown before they closed up in the 90s. After that, he collected watches, vintage pieces mostly, each one with a story. He'd sit at his workbench in the garage, those reading glasses perched on his nose, and he'd tell me about every gear, every spring, every tiny mechanism that made time move forward. When he died, he left me his collection. 8 watches, ranging from a 1940s Bulova to a couple of Swiss pieces I couldn't even pronounce. He kept them in an old mahogany case with brass corners, the kind that clicked when you opened it. That case sat on the shelf in my study for 8 months. I'd look at it sometimes, remember Dad's hands working on those delicate movements, and feel that hollow ache you get when someone's gone for good. This morning, I walked into my study with my coffee. The shelf was empty. I stood there, mug halfway to my mouth, staring at the empty space where the case should have been. The dust outline was still there, lighter than the wood around it. My chest tightened. Monica, I called out. She came in from the kitchen, drying her hands on a dish towel. Her expression was casual, almost bored. What? Where's Dad's watch case? I asked, keeping my voice level. She glanced at the shelf, then back at me. Oh, that. I sold it. The words didn't register at first. You what? I sold it, Monica repeated, waving the towel dismissively. Daniel needed cash for his security deposit. That apartment complex wanted first, last, and deposit up front. Daniel, her 30-year-old son from her first marriage. The same Daniel who'd been between opportunities for the past 2 years, living in our basement rent-free. Those were my father's watches, I said slowly. Trash, she said flatly. Daniel needs cash. They were just sitting there collecting dust. Roland, when was the last time you even opened that case? I felt something shift inside me, something fundamental. How much did you get? $600, she said. Some guy off Craigslist. He seemed thrilled. $600. 8 watches my father spent 4 decades collecting. For pieces of his soul. You didn't think to ask me first. My voice was quiet now, dangerous. Monica's eyes narrowed. Ask you? You've been moping around for 8 months. Someone had to be practical. Daniel has an opportunity here, a real chance to get back on his feet. I set my coffee down carefully on the desk. My hand was shaking. Get out. Excuse me. Get out of my study, I said, meeting her eyes. Now. She left, muttering something about me being dramatic. I heard her footsteps fade down the hallway, then the sound of her car starting in the driveway. Going to Daniel's, probably, to celebrate their little victory. I sat down at my desk and stared at that empty shelf. 32 years I'd been inspecting buildings, looking for structural weaknesses, making sure families were safe. And I'd missed the termites eating away at my own foundation. My phone rang. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. Mr. Hayes. A man's voice, older, careful. Speaking. My name is Warren Daniels. I bought a collection of watches from your wife this morning. My pulse quickened. Yes, sir, he said, and there was something in his tone that made me sit up straighter. One watch has something engraved inside. You need to come here right now. Warren Daniels' shop sat on the east side of Columbus, tucked between a pawn shop and a shuttered diner. The sign above the door read, Daniels Timepieces, Repair and Restoration, in faded gold lettering. I pulled into the gravel lot, my truck the only vehicle there besides an old Lincoln Continental that had seen better days. Inside, the shop smelled like machine oil and old wood. Glass cases lined the walls, filled with watches in various states of repair. A workbench dominated the back corner, covered with tiny tools and parts one couldn't begin to identify. Sunlight streamed through dusty windows, catching the brass and silver like captured stars. Warren Daniels stood behind the counter. He was tall, maybe 6'3", with white hair and shoulders that still carried the memory of strength. He had to be pushing 80, but his eyes were sharp, assessing me as I walked in. "Mr. Hayes," he said, extending a weathered hand. I shook it. His grip was firm, respectful. "You said you found something." "I did," Warren replied, then paused. "But first, I need to tell you something. Your father and I knew each other." That stopped me cold. "What?" "Raymond Hayes and I were business partners," Warren said quietly. 43 years ago. We ran a watch repair shop together, right here in Columbus. Different location, but same business." I stared at him, trying to reconcile this information. Dad never mentioned a partner. "No," Warren said, his voice carrying old pain. "He wouldn't have. We had a falling out in 1982. Bad one. I did something I'm not proud of, something that broke his trust. We went our separate ways, and we never spoke again." "What did you do?" I asked. Warren's jaw tightened. "I borrowed money from our business account without telling him. My daughter needed surgery, and I panicked. I planned to pay it back, but Raymond found out before I could. He was right to be angry. Trust is everything in a partnership, and I violated that." He moved to the workbench and picked up the mahogany case. My father's case. Seeing it in someone else's hands made my chest ache. "When your wife called this morning about selling watches," Warren continued, "and she mentioned your last name, I wondered. Then I saw these." He opened the case carefully, reverently. I recognized 3 of them immediately. "Your father showed them to me years ago, before everything went south between us." The watches lay in their velvet slots, each one a small universe of gears and hands. Warren lifted out a 1952 Omega Seamaster, its face still pristine despite the decades. "This one," he said, turning it over. "Look at the back." He handed it to me. I tilted it toward the light, and that's when I saw it. Engraved in tiny, precise letters on the case back. "For Roland. If you're reading this, someone made a choice without you. Call Warren Daniels. 614-555-8847. Trust him." "Dad." My hand started shaking. "What the hell?" Warren's expression was grave. "Your father came to see me 6 months before he died. First time in over 40 years. He didn't want to rehash old business. He just asked me a favor." "What favor?" My voice came out rough. "He said if anyone ever tried to sell these watches without you present, I should buy them, no matter the price," Warren explained. "He said it would mean something had shifted in your life, something you might not see clearly. He wanted you protected." I sat down hard on a stool, my legs suddenly weak. "He knew." "Knew what?" Warren asked gently. "That Monica would do this," I said, the realization hitting me like a hammer. That she'd take what mattered to me and sell it off like garbage. Warren set the watch down carefully. "Raymond didn't say much about your personal life. Just that he'd noticed patterns, things that worried him. He wanted to make sure you had someone looking out for you, even after he was gone." "Why you?" I asked. "After what happened between you." I asked him the same thing, Warren said. "He told me that people make mistakes, but that doesn't mean they stop being decent. He said I'd spent 40 years trying to make amends through my work, my community, my family. He said that kind of consistency matters." I looked at the watches again, seeing them differently now. Not just timepieces, but a message. A warning system my father had built before he died. "There's more," Warren said, reaching under the counter. He pulled out a sealed envelope, my name written across the front in Dad's careful handwriting. "He left this with me. Said you'd know when to open it." I took the envelope with trembling hands. It felt heavier than paper should. "Mr. Hayes," Warren said, his voice quiet but firm. "I don't know what's in that envelope, but your father was careful, methodical. If he went to this much trouble, there's a reason. Whatever you find, don't ignore it." I nodded, unable to speak. Outside, a car horn honked. Life continued, oblivious. But inside this dusty shop, surrounded by frozen time, my father's voice reached across death to warn me. And I was finally listening. I opened the envelope carefully, my hand still unsteady. Inside were 3 sheets of paper, folded together, and a small photograph that slipped out onto the counter. Warren picked it up before it could fall. "This you?" he asked, studying the photo. I looked. It showed a baby, maybe 6 months old, being held by a young woman I didn't recognize. She had dark hair, kind eyes, and a nervous smile. On the back, written in faded pencil, Roland, March 15th, 1965. That's my birth date, I said slowly. But I don't know who she is. Warren handed it back without comment. I unfolded the letter. Dad's handwriting filled the pages, neat and methodical as always. Son, if you're reading this, Warren has done what I asked. Good. That means you need to hear some things I should have told you years ago, but didn't. I was protecting you. Or at least that's what I told myself. My chest tightened. You were adopted. Your mother, your real mother, couldn't keep you. She was 17, unmarried, and scared. Your biological father was already gone, killed in Vietnam 3 months before you were born. She gave you to us when you were 3 days old. The words blurred. I blinked hard, forcing myself to keep reading. Her name was Elizabeth Thornton, the woman in the photo. She made us promise we'd give you a good life, and we did. Your mother and I loved you from the moment we held you. You were ours in every way that mattered. But here's what you need to know now. Monica knows. She found the adoption papers 2 years ago when she was going through the basement. She confronted me about it, wanted to know if you knew. When I said no, she saw an opportunity. My hand started shaking harder. Son, I watched her these past 2 years. The way she talks about your real family, how she brings up inheritance questions, how she positions Daniel as your responsibility because you understand what it's like to not have biological connections. She's been using your adoption as leverage, making you feel obligated to prove you belong. I set the letter down, my vision swimming. Warren pushed a glass of water across the counter. I drank it, trying to steady my breathing. You okay? Warren asked quietly. Keep reading, I said, more to myself than to him. There's more. Last month, Monica tried to access your medical records. She claimed she needed them for insurance purposes, but the hospital flagged it because she requested a full genetic workup. When I asked her about it, she said she was worried about your family history. Roland, she was building a case. Dr. Philip Grant, the physician who handled the request, is her second cousin. I looked into him. 3 malpractice complaints, all settled quietly. He specializes in competency evaluations for estate planning. The room tilted. She was trying to have me declared incompetent. Warren's jaw clenched. Your father thought so. I picked up the letter again, forcing myself through the last section. I've documented everything. Dates, conversations, the medical records request, all of it. Warren has copies in his safe. I've also contacted Robert Kemp, an attorney I trust. He's expecting you to call. Son, I'm sorry. Sorry I didn't tell you about the adoption sooner. Sorry I can't be there to help you through this. But you need to understand, Monica didn't marry you for love. She married you for security. And now that I'm gone, she thinks there's no one left to stop her. You're stronger than you know. You came from a brave woman who made the hardest choice of her life, and you were raised by people who chose you every single day. Don't let anyone make you feel less than whole. Protect yourself. Trust Warren. And remember, blood doesn't make family. Love does. Dad. I folded the letter carefully and slid it back into the envelope. The shop was silent except for the ticking of a dozen clocks. Your father was thorough, Warren said. He gave me copies of everything. Medical records, correspondence, even recordings of phone conversations with Monica. Recordings. I looked up sharply. Warren nodded. Your father wasn't tech-savvy, but I helped him set up a system. Monica didn't know. He documented 6 months' worth of conversations where she discussed your diminishing capacity with Daniel and her cousin. The anger came then, hot and clarifying. Not explosive, but cold and focused. The kind of anger that builds foundations instead of burning bridges. I need to see everything, I said. Warren pulled a thick folder from the safe. Already prepared. Your father updated this every 2 weeks until he died. The last entry was 3 days before his heart attack. I opened the folder. Inside were transcripts, medical documents, email printouts, even photographs of Monica meeting with Dr. Grant at a coffee shop. She's been planning this for 2 years, I said. At least, Warren confirmed. Your father believed longer. He thought she targeted you specifically because you were adopted, because she assumed you'd feel obligated to prove your worth by taking care of her son. I closed the folder and met Warren's eyes. He wanted me to have proof before she could act. He wanted you armed, Warren said. The question is, what are you going to do with it? I sat in Robert Kemp's office 3 hours later, the folder open on his mahogany desk. Kemp was 50, sharp-eyed, with the calm demeanor of someone who'd seen every variation of human betrayal. He'd been reading through Dad's documentation for 20 minutes without speaking. Finally, he looked up. "Your father was meticulous. This is admissible, all of it." "What exactly am I looking at?" I asked. Kemp pulled out a specific document. "This is an application for medical power of attorney, dated 4 months ago. Monica submitted it to the probate court, claiming you'd authorized it verbally due to increasing cognitive difficulties." My stomach dropped. "I never authorized anything." "I know," Kemp said. "The court rejected it because you'd never been formally evaluated." That's when she approached Dr. Grant. He slid another paper forward. "This is a preliminary psychiatric evaluation request. Never completed, but initiated. Because Dad died," I said, understanding dawning. "Exactly. Your father's death complicated her timeline. She needed you vulnerable, grieving, distracted. The watch sale was a test." I leaned forward. "A test of what?" "Whether you'd fight back," Kemp explained. "If you accepted it, she'd know she could push further. Next would be the house, retirement accounts, gradually shifting everything into joint control, then exclusively hers." Warren had followed me to the office and now sat in the corner, listening intently. "How far along is she?" he asked. Kemp pulled out another document. "She filed for divorce 2 weeks ago." The words hit like a fist. "What?" "Preemptive filing," Kemp explained. "In Ohio, whoever files first has certain advantages. She's claiming 15 years of marriage, requesting spousal support, half the house value, and compensation for emotional labor and caretaking." "Caretaking?" I nearly laughed. "Of what?" "Of you," Kemp said flatly. "Her filing claims you've been increasingly dependent, that she's had to manage household finances, make medical decisions, essentially act as your guardian." I sat back, stunned. "None of that is true. Truth doesn't matter in initial filings," Kemp said. "It's about establishing narrative. But here's where it gets interesting." He pulled out a different folder, this one newer. "I've been monitoring her attorney's motions. 3 days ago, they filed an emergency request to freeze your assets, claiming you're at risk of dissipating marital property." "Let me guess," I said. "They want her to have temporary control." "Correct. The hearing is scheduled for next Wednesday." Warren shifted in his seat. "Can they win?" "Without your father's documentation?" "Possibly," Kemp admitted. "With it, no chance. But we need to act fast." I looked at the pile of evidence, at the life my father had spent his final months protecting. "What do I do?" Kemp's expression hardened. "We go on offense. File a counter-motion, present evidence of fraud and manipulation, request a full investigation into Dr. Grant's relationship with Monica, and freeze her access to any joint accounts." "She'll lose her mind," I said. "Good," Kemp replied. "Angry people make mistakes. Right now, she thinks you're passive, grieving, easy to manipulate. We show her otherwise, she'll overreact." Warren spoke up. "What about Daniel?" Kemp flipped to another section. "Her son is interesting. He's not named in the divorce filing, which suggests she's keeping him separate, possibly as a backup plan. But your father documented several conversations where Daniel discussed your house as his future investment." My hands clenched into fists. "They've been counting on me dying or disappearing, or being declared incompetent and institutionalized," Kemp added, "which would give Monica full control as your guardian, with Daniel as backup." The full picture crystallized. This wasn't just about money or property. This was about erasing me completely, turning me into a legal non-person while keeping my assets. "I want to fight," I said. "All of it. I want them to understand they picked the wrong target." Kemp smiled, cold and professional. "Then we start tomorrow. I'll need you to sign some authorizations, give a full deposition, and prepare for depositions for Monica and her attorney. It won't be pleasant." "I don't care about pleasant," I said. "I care about truth." Warren stood, walking over to shake my hand. "Your father will be proud. He knew you had steel in you, even if you'd forgotten." I stood as well, feeling something shift inside me. The grief was still there, the betrayal still raw. But underneath it, something harder was forming. Not rage. Purpose. "One more thing," Kemp said. "Your father left instructions about the watches. He wanted you to keep them, but he also said they're worth substantially more than Monica knows." "How much more?" I asked. Kemp consulted a document. The collection was appraised at $47,000 6 months ago. But one piece, a Patek Philippe from 1951, is currently valued at approximately $850,000. The number hung in the air. She sold it for $600, I said quietly. Yes, Kemp confirmed. Which, legally, constitutes destruction of marital assets. We can use that. I looked at Warren, who nodded. It's in my safe. I knew what it was the moment I saw it. Everything my father had built, every piece of protection he put in place, was falling into alignment. He'd known this was coming, had prepared for it, had given me the tools I'd need. Now it was my job to use them. The next morning, I drove to my sister Janet's house in Westerville. She lived in a tidy ranch with flower beds that were probably Monica's idea, knowing Janet's hatred of yard work. Her car sat in the driveway. She was home. I knocked. No answer. I knocked again, harder. The door opened. Janet stood there in her bathrobe, coffee mug in hand, her expression shifting from surprise to something guarded. "Roland," she said carefully. "It's early. We need to talk," I said. She hesitated, then stepped aside. "Come in." The living room was decorated in shades of beige and cream, safe and neutral. Family photos lined the mantel. Several included Monica. I never noticed how many before. "What's this about?" Janet asked, sitting in her armchair like a queen on a throne. I remained standing. "How long have you known Monica?" Her eyes flickered. "What kind of question is that?" "Since you married her, obviously." "Try again," I said evenly. "Dad kept records. You and Monica have been friends since 2006, a year before you introduced us." The color drained from her face. "Roland, don't." I interrupted, my voice hard. "Don't insult me by lying. I know about the medical records request. I know you helped her access my files. I know you've been part of this from the beginning." Janet set her coffee down, her hand shaking slightly. "You don't understand." "Then explain it to me," I said. "Explain how my sister helped my wife build a case to have me declared incompetent." "It wasn't like that," Janet said, but her voice lacked conviction. "Monica was worried about you. After Dad died, you seemed lost, unfocused. We thought, I stepped closer. You thought what? That I needed to be managed? Controlled." Janet stood, defensive now. "You were adopted, Roland. You never had real family obligations. You don't understand what it means to have blood relatives who need you." The words hit like a slap. "Dad told you that adoption made me less than family." "Dad wasn't your real father," Janet said, and there it was, the truth she'd been holding back for years. "He chose you, yes, but that's not the same as—" "Get out of my way," I said quietly. She blinked. "What?" "You heard me. I'm leaving, and you're going to step aside." "Roland, you're being irrational." "I'm being clear," I corrected. "Clearer than I've been in years. You helped Monica target me because you never saw me as real family. That's fine. But now you're going to live with the consequences." Janet's face crumpled. "I'm your sister." "No," I said, moving toward the door. "You're Raymond and Linda Hayes' biological daughter. That's genetics. Family is something you earn, and you just lost it." I walked out, leaving her standing in her beige living room, surrounded by photos of a family that had never really included me. Robert Kemp was waiting in my truck, reviewing documents. "How'd it go?" he asked as I climbed in. "She confirmed everything," I said, "and showed me exactly who she is." Kemp nodded. "Good. We can use that anger, channel into the case." Monica's attorney requested an emergency hearing for tomorrow. "They're pushing hard." "Let them push," I said. "I'm done being managed." The courtroom was smaller than I expected, more office than theater. Judge Andrea Phillips presided, a woman in her 60s with sharp eyes and no patience for nonsense. Monica sat with her attorney, Paul Vickers, a slick-looking man in an expensive suit. She didn't look at me. Kemp laid out our countermotion methodically. He presented Dad's documentation, the medical records requests, the financial irregularities, the recordings of Monica discussing my diminishing capacity. Vickers tried to interrupt. "Your Honor, these recordings were made without Mrs. Hayes' knowledge. In her home," Kemp interrupted smoothly, "which Mr. Hayes' father owned, and where he had every right to record. Ohio is a one-party consent state." Judge Phillips reviewed the transcripts in silence. Finally, she looked up at Monica. "Mrs. Hayes, Did you attempt to access your husband's medical records without his authorization? Monica's composure slipped. I was concerned about his health. Yes or no, Mrs. Hayes? Yes, but did you request a psychiatric evaluation without his knowledge or consent? Silence. Mrs. Hayes, answer the question. I was trying to help him, Monica said, her voice rising. His father had just died. He was clearly struggling. Your Honor, Kemp interjected. We have evidence that Mrs. Hayes began planning these actions 2 years before Mr. Hayes' father passed away. He presented the timeline, the documents, the email to the appraiser about the watches, the transfers to Daniel's account. Judge Phillips' expression grew colder with each piece of evidence. Mrs. Hayes, she said finally, this court finds sufficient evidence of financial impropriety and potential fraud to warrant investigation. All joint accounts are hereby frozen pending full audit. Emergency spousal support is denied. Temporary possession of the marital home is denied. Monica's face went white. Your Honor, I have nowhere to go. You have a son with an apartment, apparently funded by your unauthorized transfers, Judge Phillips said dryly. I suggest you stay there. This case is remanded for full discovery. We'll reconvene in 30 days. The gavel fell. Monica turned to me then, her mask finally dropping. The look in her eyes was pure hatred. You'll regret this, she hissed as she passed. I met her gaze steadily. No, Monica. You will. Warren called 3 days after the hearing. I've been working on something, he said. Can you come to the shop? I drove over immediately. Inside, Warren had the watch collection spread across his workbench under bright lights. He'd been examining each piece methodically, using magnification equipment I didn't understand. What did you find? I asked. He picked up a 1947 Hamilton. Your father was methodical, right? Everything had a purpose. Always, I confirmed. Then why would he collect 8 watches but only engrave a message on one? Warren turned the Hamilton over, showing me the smooth, unmarked case back. I started thinking about the others. What if there's more? He reached for a small screwdriver and carefully opened the case back. Inside, beneath the movement, was a tiny folded piece of paper, sealed in a plastic sleeve. How did you know? I asked. I didn't, Warren admitted. But your father and I used to hide notes in watch cases when we worked together. Customers would bring pieces in for repair years later and find our messages. It was our signature. He handed me the paper. I unfolded it carefully. Dad's handwriting, smaller but still precise. Roland, if you found this, you're looking deeper. Good. Monica was my caregiver for 6 months before I introduced her to you. She applied for a position through the senior center, helped with medications, shopping appointments. I didn't think anything of it until I noticed morphine tablets missing. When I confronted her, she claimed I'd miscounted. That's when I started documenting. My hands tightened on the paper. I never told you because you seemed happy. She was attentive, caring, everything you've been looking for. But I watched, and I saw the pattern. She wasn't helping me. She was studying me, learning about assets, family dynamics, vulnerabilities. When you got engaged, I tried to warn you. Remember our conversation about being careful? You thought I was being overprotective. I was being specific. The memory surfaced. Dad pulling me aside at my engagement party, asking if I was sure, if I'd really thought it through. I'd brushed him off, accused him of not wanting me to be happy. I'm sorry I wasn't clearer, but I knew if I pushed too hard, you'd pull away. So I prepared instead. Warren has documentation of the medication thefts. Small amounts. Nothing she could be prosecuted for, but enough to establish pattern. Use it if you need to. The other watches have more pieces. Keep looking. Dad. I looked up at Warren. He said she was his caregiver. That's how they met. Warren nodded grimly. I remember her. Professional, efficient, always asking questions about his finances under the guise of helping him organize paperwork. Your father mentioned her a few times, said she was almost too interested in his affairs. Why didn't he fire her? He did, Warren said. 2 weeks before he introduced you to her. Told her services were no longer needed. Then she showed up at your construction site with coffee and lunch, claiming she'd heard you worked long hours. The pieces clicked into place with sickening clarity. She targeted me because of Dad. She targeted you because you were his heir, Warren corrected. And because as an adopted son with no other family except Janet, you were vulnerable. Easy to isolate, easy to manipulate. I set the paper down, my jaw clenched. What about the other watches? Warren had already opened 3 more. Each contained another note, each revealing another layer of Monica's planning. Medical records she'd copied, financial documents she'd photographed, conversations she'd recorded with Dad where she carefully probed about his estate plans. She was building a profile, I said. For years, Warren confirmed. Your father documented all of it. He knew if he went to the police with medication theft claims, it would be his word against hers. But this, he gestured to the notes. This is a pattern of predatory behavior spanning 5 years. Can Kemp use this? I asked. Every word, Warren said. Your father made sure everything was dated, witnessed where possible, and corroborated with external evidence. He even had the senior center director confirm Monica's employment and termination. I picked up the Patek Philippe, the $850,000 piece. What about this one? Warren's expression grew somber. I haven't opened it yet. Your father said that one was special, that you'd know when you were ready. I turned the watch over my hands, feeling its weight, its history. I'm ready now. Warren handed me the tools. Then you should be the one to open it. My hands were steady as I worked. The case back released with a soft click. Inside, beneath the pristine movement, was another note. But this time there was something else. A small brass key, identical to the one from the Omega. I unfolded the paper. Son, this key opens a safety deposit box at First Community Bank, box 247. Inside is everything you need to finish this. Evidence I couldn't risk keeping at home. Proof that will end any doubt about Monica's intentions. But more than that, there's something I need you to know. Being adopted never made you less my son. It made you more. Because I chose you. Every single day. And that choice was the best decision of my life. Go to the bank. Protect yourself. And remember, real family doesn't demand proof. It offers love without conditions. Dad. I closed my eyes, the watch still warm in my palm. Even in death, my father was 3 steps ahead, making sure I had everything I needed. There's a bank box, I said to Warren. He nodded. Then we go to the bank. The bank manager, Susan Yates, remember my father. Mr. Hayes was very specific about access protocols, she said, leading us to the vault. Only you, with that specific key, and only with photo identification. The box was larger than I expected. Inside were 3 thick folders, a USB drive, and a sealed letter marked Open Last. I started with the folders. The first contained medical records, not Dad's but Monica's. Employment history from 3 different senior care agencies. Each termination marked resigned, but with notes in the margins. Client reported missing medications. Family expressed concerns about financial questions. Inappropriate boundary discussions. She'd done this before, I said aloud. Warren, reading over my shoulder, pointed to a highlighted section. Your father tracked her employment history back 12 years. Same pattern at every job. 6 months of exemplary service. Then sudden resignation, right before families started asking questions. The second folder contained financial records. Bank statements showing Monica's accounts before and after each caregiving position. Small deposits, $5,000 here, $8,000 there, always within months of leaving a client. Gifts, Warren said, or blackmail. The third folder was correspondence. Letters from families of Monica's former clients, all expressing gratitude for her care, but also mentioning unusual requests. She asked about my father's will. She seemed very interested in his property holdings. She suggested I might need help managing his affairs. I opened the USB drive on the bank's computer. Video files, dozens of them. Dad had installed cameras in his house after hiring Monica. The footage showed her going through his desk, photographing documents, making phone calls in his living room when she thought he was asleep. In one video, she was on the phone with someone. I turned up the volume. He's got more than I thought, Monica's voice said clearly. The son is adopted, no biological claim. If I can position this right, we're looking at least $800,000 between the house and retirement accounts. Warren's jaw clenched. Who was she talking to? I fast-forwarded through more videos until I found another call. This one with video of the screen she was looking at. A contact name, Janet Hayes. Your sister was in on it from the beginning, Warren said quietly. The final video was dated a week before Dad died. Monica, alone in his house, going through a filing cabinet. She pulled out insurance documents, photographed them, then made another call. He's getting suspicious, she said. Asked me about the morphine. I think we need to move faster. Once he's gone, Roland will be vulnerable. Grieving, alone, easy to manage. She paused, listening. No, Janet agrees. He'll lean on family. That's when we consolidate control. Medical power of attorney first, then financial. The adoption angle gives us leverage. He'll do anything to prove he belongs. I stopped the video, my hands shaking with controlled rage. This is conspiracy, Warren said. Premeditated financial exploitation, possibly worse. I picked up the sealed letter. Inside, Dad's final message was brief. Roland, by now you've seen what Monica is. I'm sorry you had to learn this way. I confronted her 3 days ago. Told her I'd documented everything and that she needed to leave. She smiled and said I couldn't prove anything, that you'd never believe me over her. She was wrong. You're stronger than she knows. Take this evidence to Kemp. Protect yourself, and know that I loved you until my last breath. You were never second choice. You were my choice. The only one that mattered. Dad. The date on the letter was 4 days before his heart attack. Warren saw my expression. What are you thinking? I'm thinking Dad confronted a woman who'd been stealing from elderly people for over a decade, I said slowly. And 4 days later, he died of a sudden heart attack. A man with no history of heart disease. Warren's face went pale. You think? I think we need to call Kemp, I said. And then we need to call the police. Because if Monica was willing to destroy me, what would she have done to someone who threatened to expose her? The question hung in the air, heavy and damning. But I already knew the answer. I'd seen it in her eyes at the courthouse. She'd do whatever it took. And she probably already had. Detective Rebecca Brennan from the Columbus Police Department reviewed the evidence with clinical precision. She was in her 40s, sharp-eyed, with the kind of focus that missed nothing. Robert Kemp sat beside me as she went through each folder, each video, each transcript. This is extensive, she said finally. Your father documented a pattern spanning over a decade. Can you investigate his death? I asked directly. Brennan looked up. Based on this, yes. We'll need to exhume the body, run a full toxicology screen. The original autopsy was basic, standard for an 83-year-old with no suspected foul play. But now there's suspicion, Kemp interjected. Significant suspicion, Brennan agreed. She pointed to the medical records. 3 former clients, all elderly, all died within months of Monica Hayes' departure. All ruled natural causes, but given her access to medications and her pattern of theft, we need to look deeper. The exhumation happened 2 weeks later. I stood in the cemetery with Warren, watching workers carefully remove the casket. It felt wrong, disturbing Dad's rest, but he'd left evidence for a reason. The toxicology results came back 5 days later. Detective Brennan called me to the station. Your father had lethal levels of digoxin in his system, she said without preamble. It's a heart medication, but he wasn't prescribed it. In high doses, it causes cardiac arrest that mimics natural death. My vision tunneled. Monica killed him. We believe so, Brennan confirmed. We're also investigating the 3 other deaths. Exhumations are in progress. But Mr. Hayes, your father's documentation gives us probable cause to arrest Monica on suspicion of murder. They arrested her the next morning at Daniel's apartment. I wasn't there, but Kemp called me with the details. She tried to run, had bags packed in her car. They found forged documents, false identification, and $43,000 in cash. Daniel was arrested too. The investigation revealed he'd known about the medication thefts, had helped Monica access prescription pads from clinics where she'd worked. He claimed he thought it was just borrowing, but the evidence showed he'd received $15,000 over 2 years. Janet was brought in for questioning. She wasn't charged with murder, but she faced conspiracy charges for helping Monica access my medical records and for participating in the attempted fraud. Her attorney negotiated a plea deal in exchange for testimony. The trial happened 8 months later. I sat in the courtroom every day, watching prosecutors methodically dismantle Monica's defense. They presented Dad's videos, the medication records, the testimony from former clients' families, and the forensic evidence from the exhumation. Monica's attorney tried to argue circumstantial evidence, but the pattern was undeniable. For elderly clients, all dead within months of her employment ending, all with elevated digoxin levels. Dad had been her 5th target, the one who'd caught her. The jury deliberated for 6 hours. When they returned, the forewoman stood. In the case of the state of Ohio versus Monica Cooper Hayes, on the charge of murder in the first degree of Raymond Hayes, we find the defendant guilty. 3 more guilty verdicts followed, for murders spanning 12 years. Monica's face remained expressionless as they read the sentence. Life without parole for consecutive terms. Daniel pleaded guilty to conspiracy and fraud. He got 15 years. Janet took her plea deal, 3 years probation and permanent loss of medical record access privileges. After the sentencing, Warren found me outside the courthouse. "Your father would be proud," he said. "He saved my life," I replied. "From beyond the grave." Warren nodded. "He gave you the tools. You did the fighting." 9 months after the trial, I stood in my garage with the mahogany watch case open on my father's old workbench. Warren had restored each piece to perfect working condition. The Patek Philippe alone had been valued at $870,000 after authentication, but I wasn't selling it. I made some changes in those 9 months. Sold the house, the one I'd share with Monica. Too many ghosts. Bought a smaller place in Upper Arlington with a dedicated workshop space. Warren had been teaching me watch repair, said I had my father's steady hands. The divorce was finalized 3 months ago. With Monica in prison, it went quickly. No alimony, no property division, just dissolution. I'd recovered the $47,000 she'd transferred to Daniel from his accounts before sentencing. It went into a trust for Catherine Thornton's grandchildren, the biological family I'd never known. I'd contacted Elizabeth Thornton, my birth mother. We'd met for coffee twice. She was in her 70s now, frail but kind. She wept when she saw me, kept saying she'd wondered every day if she'd made the right choice. I told her she had. My parents, Raymond and Linda Hayes, had given me everything. Janet had written from probation. I hadn't responded. Some betrayals don't heal with time. The building inspector position felt different now. I'd always been good at spotting structural weaknesses. Now I understood why. Growing up adopted, raised by a watchmaker who showed love through careful attention to detail, I'd learned to see what others missed, to look beneath surfaces, to trust but verify. Warren appeared in the garage doorway, carrying 2 cups of coffee. "You ready for today's lesson?" he asked. "Always," I said. We'd formed a partnership, Warren and I, Daniels and Hayes Horological Services, restoring the business he and Dad had built 40 years ago, before pride and mistakes tore it apart. This time, built on honesty and shared purpose. As we worked on a vintage Omega, my phone buzzed. A text from Robert Kemp. Civil suit settled. Monica's former employers are paying restitution to victims' families. Your father's documentation made it airtight. I smiled. Dad's final gift kept giving. Good news? Warren asked. The best kind, I replied. Justice for people who can't fight for themselves anymore. Warren nodded. Raymond would approve. I picked up the Patek Philippe and turned it over. On the caseback, I'd had a new inscription added beneath Dad's original message. For Raymond Hayes, who taught me that family is choice, love is action, and time is the most valuable thing we can give. Your son, Roland. That evening, I sat on my new porch with a glass of bourbon, watching the sunset. The watch collection sat inside, each piece keeping perfect time. Dad's legacy, preserved and honored. My phone rang. Elizabeth Thornton. Hello. I answered. Roland, she said softly. She still sometimes called me by my birth name before correcting herself to Roland. I was thinking about your father today. I never got to thank him for raising you so well. He knew, I said. That's what mattered. We talked for an hour about small things. The weather, her garden, my business with Warren. Normal conversation between two people learning to know each other without the weight of past decisions crushing every word. When we hung up, I sat in the quiet evening, feeling something I hadn't felt in years. Peace. Not happiness exactly, not yet, but the solid certainty that comes from standing on firm ground. Dad had given me that, not through blood, but through choice, through careful preparation and unconditional love, through teaching me to see clearly and trust carefully. The watches ticked inside, 8 small universes marking time's passage, each one a reminder that the most important moments aren't the ones that happen to us, but the ones we choose. Dad chose me. Warren chose redemption. I chose truth. And time, patient and precise, kept moving forward, just like it should.